Um, Welcome to remote learning. We are starting Animate. Um, as you can see here, I do have Animate pulled up. This is the 2020 version, so it does look a little different than maybe what you learned with me or Mitchell during class. The point of this video is to kind of refresh you on what Animate looks like and what we are going to be doing to kind of review to get us back in the mode of Animate. For this one, because like I said, we're in 2020, it looks a little different than what we're used to. We are going to start by creating a new canvas here. On our class website, I have given you directions. This is going to be, this is on the animation projects page, but it's also going to be on your Bellwork agenda page for you to be able to access as you would like. What we're going to be doing for this activity is we're going to be creating a review flying plane animation. I have my little version up here, which is one that I did before, just so you could kind of see. I'm not looking for a huge amount from you on this. It's just to kind of refresh from what we did in Digital Media 1, the idea of doing keyframes, the idea of doing motion paths, and different ways that we can manipulate and move animation. For some of you, it's been only a semester since you've done animation. For some of you, it's been a little bit longer. So this activity is really just to get us back in the mode of animation. We are going to be working at 24 frames per second. We're going to be doing a 60 frame animation using Adobe Animate. If you have not downloaded Adobe Animate from the Adobe Creative Cloud icon, make sure that you do that. If you do not have access, please email me privately and you and I can discuss what you can do through phone apps and some other options for you in order to get this basic understanding. I have given you two different options for you to animate. These are both PNGs or GIFs for you to use. So there's no background. There's nothing you need to cut out. We are going to create a very basic frame. We do not need anything more than what you see here. If you'll notice, this looks a little different than what it looked like before. So it is an updated version. They have actually started updating the way that Animate is being utilized. They're adding some new features. They're doing some things. So it looks a little bit different than maybe what you're used to, which I think is maybe a good thing. I kind of like the new interface so far. What we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to start up to 60 frames. We're going to remind ourselves about a couple of things. Our toolbar here is on the left. Our properties panel is on the right, and that as we change tools, remember that that property panel is going to change based on what you have selected. I do like that they have updated the interface. It looks a lot more easy to use. They've labeled it fill and stroke. They've got your opacity here, your stroke size, your width. They've done some nice things here so that when we're manipulating things, it looks a little easier to use, which is kind of a refreshing thing. For my animation here, I do want to create a stage color that is the color of a sky. Okay, we'll deal with that later. So I'm going to pick kind of a blue color. Think of it kind of like what we did with our snowboard. It's completely up to you what color we're going to do. I'm going to open and drag. I've already saved my little plane here onto my desktop for me to use, and I'm going to drag this in. Remember that when we add something into our stage, and I'm going to, when we add something into our stage, it's going to automatically be added into our library. There it is. I can drag out another copy if I want to. And I'm going to grab my selection tool so that I can kind of move it around. Obviously, it's a little large for what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to get my free transform tool and I'm going to change its size. Remember that if we do not hold shift down in Animate, you will distort the proportions of your object. So that looks about right for me. I'm going to kind of place him where I want him and go back to my selection tool. Underneath my layer 1, I'm going to rename layer 1, clicking twice to activate that rename, and I'm going to change it to plane. So if we remember when I'm moving this, everybody sees a little black icon. So what I want to do is I want my plane to kind of fly across my stage and exit my stage, and I want it to start off the stage. I'm going to right click, except for my right click is not working. I'm gonna right click on my layer, and I'm gonna say add a classic motion guide. This is what we did in Digital Media 1. Again, none of this is new material. This is all a refresher. This video from Digital Media 1 is still available to you if you would like to watch a more detailed explanation of adding a classic motion guide. I'm gonna add this. It's gonna add a secondary layer for me. On that secondary layer, on frame 1, I'm gonna grab my paintbrush or my pencil, it doesn't matter. And I'm essentially going, and I'm gonna reset my colors down here so that I can draw and not in blue. And I'm gonna draw a path that I want my plane to follow. Just a real simple path, nothing really extreme. Actually, I'm gonna redraw it because I'm gonna start it a little further out so I have room to exit and enter my stage. On frame 1, remember that when we're talking about animation, we're talking about not only where we are in time, but where we are in space on our canvas. So in time, I only have something existing on one frame. I am at 24 frames per second. It's right there for me. I can change that up on my properties panel here and change that. I want it to stay 24. That's perfectly fine. If you wanted to change it, you can change it right there. But right now, my path and my plane do not exist past frame 1. So I'm going to come down to frame 60. I can either right click and say insert a keyframe, or I can hit F5 to insert a frame, to extend the path that I want my plane to follow. By inserting the frame, now my path exists. Now I need to add my plane as well, but I want to insert a keyframe this time because I want to ensure that when I am moving my plane, I can animate. When we're building an animation in Animate, you have to start and stop all animations with a keyframe, which is that black dot that's existing now. So now my plane exists on frame 1 and frame 60. My guide exists on frame 1 through frame 60. I'm gonna go back to frame 1. I'm gonna grab my plane here, and I'm gonna move it so the black dot lines up with the start of my path. I'm gonna come down to frame 60, and I'm gonna take that same black dot and I'm gonna line it up with the end of my path. And you saw it kind of pulled it kind of grabbed it and yanked it for me onto my path so that I didn't have to worry about where whether it was perfectly aligned or not. I'm going to select my entire plane layer. Again, I'm going to right click and I am going to say create a classic tween. Classic tween is what's going to do the math for us. And we're going to say, yes, I do want to convert and create a tween. I needed to convert this to a symbol. That's my fault. I didn't convert that to a symbol first. That must be new. It usually used to convert to a symbol automatically with a photograph. So now when I hit return on my keyboard, you're going to see that it's moving slowly because there seems to be a lag in my program. This is a big program. I'm going to warn you guys. It's a very large program, but you see it follows my path. I'm going to hide my guide layer so that you don't see the path that I'm following. A couple other things I might want to do with this is I want to maybe I'm going to add at least 3 animations. You all are going to add at least 3 animations. I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to maybe call this one clouds. And what I'm going to do is on frame 1, I'm going to come over and grab, you can do a paintbrush cloud if you want to. You can do circles that overlap. I think it's kind of your call. I'm going to just draw me a free-handed cloud here. I'm going to connect the brushed back so that I can use the paint bucket to fill my cloud. And I'm actually going to do my clouds on separate layers because I want to be able to move my clouds just a little. So on frame 1, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to come down to frame 60. I'm going to insert a keyframe. And I'm just going to move my cloud just a little down my frame. I'm going to select my whole layer here. I'm going to right click again and I'm going to say create another classic tween, and guess I'm going to convert it to a symbol. And now again, this time my cloud is going to move in theory. Y'all see that, right? I don't know what it's doing here. I'm going to move it so that my cloud starts at frame 1 and ends at frame 60, and I have that movement animated. so that it's kind of moving, something else is moving with my, why is it moving? Y'all see that, right? It's moving forwards and then backwards. I think it's grabbing the path, I think is what's happened. Yep, it's on the path. See what I did? Whoops. I was like, what in the world? So let me move that off the path and then move this. So problem solving at its best. So sometimes when this happens, you got to maybe drag your cloud layer above the guided path so that it will no longer follow. So now we're good. Now I've got it off my path. That's a funny thing. Never had that issue before. So I might make another cloud layer. This time I might do a different shape on my cloud layer. So it's a little different. And maybe instead of having it solid, I'm going to take it and I'm going to change the opacity of this to 70%. And then that way, when I'm selecting this cloud, what I'm going to get is something that kind of lets me have some transparency with the way that the clouds are moving. And before the computer asks me to do it, I'm going to right click and say convert to symbol. I'm going to call this cloud 2. And now I'm going to animate this one. So I've got it starting here, and I'm going to come down to frame 60. I'm going to insert a keyframe, and I'm going to move it over here this time. Now, this is going to be stacking order. So as we select these, the transparent cloud is going to go on top of my solid cloud. So now when I move them, you're going to see the movement. Now, just for fun, I'm going to take this cloud and I'm going to change its transparency so we can see it moving, so we can see it changing and modifying. So what I have to do is come in here, edit symbol properties, advanced. Oh, I apologize. They moved where it is. This is the fun part. This is when you're like, oh, so we're going to do alpha, excuse me. And I'm just going to turn it down a little bit, not as much as the other one, just so that when these go on top of each other, I can see them crossing. So your goal for this activity is to animate your plane in some fashion. You are going to animate 2 additional items and then decorate your stage. Remember, when we're decorating your stage, you have rectangles, you can use circles, lines, text, various different things. They've also added some new brushes for you to kind of play with, which is kind of nice. So I definitely would strongly suggest you kind of figure out. So if you wanted to have an angle on your brush or you wanted to have it not as round, you can kind of play with these new brushes and see that they're a little different than they used to be. This is kind of a cool thing, I think, where it used to be there was only one round brush, and now we have a lot of choices with our brush, which I think is kind of neat. I'm going to undo all this. And that is our review of Animate. Remember that this isn't meant to be an activity that I'm trying to kill you on. I really just want to kind of get us back in review mode. Remember that when you select an object, you have to get the free transform tool in order to change the size of something. You can't just do Command T like you would in, say, Photoshop. You do have some color effects where you can change the colors of things as you decide. You can also make things increase. So if this cloud, I wanted to make it increase its size, I can increase it so it gets bigger. So as it's moving through that animation, it's growing. Everybody see? So just some fun things for us to kind of play with. Hopefully this will be a good review for you for Animate. We're going to be doing the logo banner project, which I'm going to give instructions for in the next video. And excited to see what everybody creates. Remember that we're going to file, export to a movie in order to turn these in. If you turn in your Animate folders, or files are going to be quite large for me. File format, please do a SWF movie. Last name, first name, what period you're in, and then we're going to call this plane. And you're going to save this and then turn this into your Google shared drive in order to get it checked. Office hours are from 1 to 2. If everything you're good, you don't feel like you have any questions, I'm excited to see what you do. If you would like to check in with me, again, 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock every day is office hours, and I will be available for you to answer questions. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.